It's the 120 podcast. Mikey Finelli alongside Benjamin Hootie. And get your hot dogs here. Get your hot dogs. I can't do it nearly as well as Jonah Fialkow, who's our guest today. Jewish Jonah, you might know him as on TikTok, or Jonah the hot dog vendor. He has a lot of aliases, as you'll hear in the beginning of this interview, Ben. But it was a great interview. I enjoyed doing it, and I can't wait to share it here with the listeners.
Yeah, for sure. It was an awesome interview. Jonah, as much as he's a hot dog vendor at Wrigley Field, he's a huge Cubs fan, and you'll see that throughout the video or throughout the interview. Really good time with Jonah, and I hope that you guys enjoy the interview as much as we had having him on.
As you've learned with our Bellis interview, with our player interviews, we definitely sit on these for usually 2 weeks. We had kind of a backed up schedule. We got a bunch of people doing interviews all at once. I think we had did 2 or 3 in 1 week at one point.
Yeah.
So this one's also about 2 weeks old. I don't believe anything is super topical though. It's more of just a repeat of last season, talking about last season, and then just moving forward to the future. And I think the coolest part for me that you're going to hear is just the separate democracy of these vendors at Wrigley Field and the way they do their drafts and all that. So I'm really looking forward to hearing feedback on this interview.
Yeah, for sure. It was a lot of fun, and I hope you guys all enjoy it.
It's the 120 podcast. Mikey Finelli alongside Ben Hootie, joined by Jonah Fialkow. Jonah, the vendor, Jewish Jonah. You might know him as a lot of different names on TikTok and everywhere around Cubs community. But Jonah, thank you for being here with us today. Wow, it's a pleasure to have one of our very own vendors who went massively viral this season on TikTok in the Zoom with us today.
Yeah, appreciate you having us. I'm excited to chat all things vending and Cubs baseball.
So yeah, we were talking about it before. Obviously, social media that was a huge part of your game this year. What kind of was your first video to pop where you realized damn, this is going really well for me, and then just continue to kind of form yourself into a content creator revolved around the Cubs every single day that you went to work?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first video that I made about my job as a vendor was actually at the very end of last year. I worked the Harry Styles concert at the United Center selling merchandise, and I made a day in the life video of a Harry Styles merch vendor, and it got 4,000 or 5,000 views, and I was like, I wonder if there's a niche here for content. And I was like, I love my job. I want to share it with other people, share the stories, and some of the guys who've been doing it for half a century. So I started making videos a week before the 2023 baseball season. And the second day, or the second home game of the year, I made a day in the life of a Wrigley Field vendor video. And I woke up the next morning and it had 300,000 views. Someone from the Cubs had reached out to me that worked in their marketing department. Someone from local news reached out wanting to schedule an interview. And that's when it kind of really took off. A week after that, I made my first which Wrigley Field hot dog vendor has the best hot dog call. And that one exploded and got 3 million views. And then I was off to the races from there.
That was the first one I saw. And what was funny was Ben and I went to a game in April, the day before Easter. And I remember seeing you and a couple of the other guys in the video. I remember literally seeing you guys there right after watching the video. I'm like, I'm here supposed to be watching Dansby Swanson and these players, but the celebrities are the ones walking up and down the aisle yelling yacht dog. So I thought it was super funny to see something that I'm so familiar with go so viral on TikTok. How long have you been in the role at Wrigley Field? So this is obviously not your first year, was it?
No, I've actually been a seat vendor since 2015. So this was season number 8, I believe.
So have you been doing it since before college as well? Because you seem like a pretty young guy.
Yeah, it was my first job right out of high school. So I started the summer I graduated high school. I also worked at a basketball camp at the same time. So I'd work the basketball camp. I lived in the north suburbs of Chicago. And then 2 of my buddies also got the gig the same year. So we'd work at the camp during the day and then drive down for night games and weekends. And since I graduated college 4 years ago, I lived downtown in the city. And this past year, I've vended more events than I ever have. So it's fun to create content around a very Cubs and concert-centric summer.
This might be awkward if the answer is no, but do you have a rock? Do you have a Cubs World Series ring?
I wish I had a World Series ring, but I do have the memories of working those games. And for me, diehard Cubs fan, I was going to the University of Illinois in Champaign, and it just so happened that the October playoff schedule in 2016 lined up where all of our home games were over the weekend. So I'd finish class on Thursday. I would drive from Champaign to back to Chicago suburbs, stay with my folks, work the Cubs home games, and then drive back right after the Sunday game. So I worked 6 home playoff games that winter, and people were paying $1,300 for standing room only, and I was getting paid to sell water in the 100 section behind the dugout. So
That's incredible.
I don't need a ring. I'm good with just being there and experiencing Wrigleyville during that time.
Something that I've always, whenever I see you guys doing your job at Wrigley Field and really vendors all over the country, is you guys got a lot to carry around on that big satchel. And sometimes I'll just be carrying something and my shoulders start to hurt. How do you guys do it for 4 hours at a time? I bet you that you got pretty strong shoulders after doing it since 2015, but it's got to hurt at some point, right?
Yeah, some of the products are definitely more awkward and uncomfortable to carry than others. I love doing the frozen margaritas because they're pretty light. But I've got to commend the 70-plus-year-olds that have been doing this for legitimately 50 years up and down the aisles carrying beer. A lot of them have had, knee and hip replacements. It's a physically demanding job, but they're still chugging along. So I need to do a better job stretching and making sure I'm taking care of myself before and after the game, because it definitely is physically taxing, especially when, it's 95 degrees in the middle of August. You got to make sure you're staying hydrated too. So it's definitely tough, but the benefits of it are that you're getting your exercise, you're outside, and you're hanging with 40,000 Cubs fans. So can't complain too much.
I would think, like you mentioned with the World Series, you're hanging around the 100 level. When there's a moment where, there's 2 strikes, there's an opportunity for a walk-off, there's something like that, no one's buying a hot dog or a frozen margarita, so you probably get a chance to turn around and kind of look, right? But is there ever a time where, like, there's a huge play we might remember that you missed because you were doing something like that?
Oh, I'm sure there's been plenty of regular season big plays that I've missed. It's the really only time that I get to watch during the game. I would say, especially during the regular season, I'm focused on selling, making sure the fans are fed and they're well hydrated with water and liquor. Whenever people stand and give a standing ovation, a 3-2 count, no one's buying anything then. So that's at those points, big moments in the game, bases loaded, full count. We got Mark Leiter Jr. coming up to strike out the guy and get out of the inning. Those are the moments I watch during the regular season. During the playoffs, most of the time people are standing, so there was a lot more watching. But during the regular season, I'm just kind of focused on the job, and it's just still fun to be in the atmosphere. And obviously, when you hear the crack of the bat, then you turn around and you see everyone on their feet, and then you hear whoop, there it is, and you're watching the video board to see how far did Patrick Wisdom hit that home run. But definitely opportunities to watch, but not my main focus during the game.
You just did an incredible job narrating what the experience for a Cubs fan is like at Wrigley Field. But I want to know a little bit about what you go, what goes into what goes in the morning. What's the process like getting to Wrigley Field, going about your job? What's that all like for you?
For sure. So luckily I live within walking distance to the stadium, which has been absolutely clutch. Vendors show up right around the time gates open. So an hour and a half to 2 hours before the game. And prior to the game, I'm making sure I talk about it in my videos. I'll have my staple breakfast sandwich, make sure I fuel up, have the energy to walk around the stadium, doing some hydrating, especially on those hot days. Then we head over, and then all the vendors line up in a room and we draft our product for the day. So there's a sheet that has product and section and how many people are going to be able to sell that. And we literally line up in seniority order before the game. The guys that have been doing it for half a century at the front. I'm still if let's say there's 100 vendors employed, there's more than 100 vendors, but if there were 100, I'm probably 70th in line, to kind of give you an idea of where I pick my product. And then it just goes through the line. And when I get up to the table, I've got a sheet in front of me. I see what's filled in, what's not. And then you have to make that split-second decision of what you're going to sell that day.
What's the undisputed, Connor Bedard of that draft, the 1-1? I mean, what is somebody grabbing?
The 1-1 is always the Bud Light, Budweiser, Michelob Ultra in the 100 section. So you need about 50 years of seniority to get that spot. So I'm only 41 years away. And then generally after that is the Goose Island, also down in the 100 section. So the stadium split into 6 sections from a vending perspective. There's no vendors in the bleachers, and then it's hundreds, 200s, and upper deck with a line drawn straight up home plate. So that divides that. There's 3 levels, and then you cut all of them in half at home plate. I generally sell like alternate alcohol down the first base line in the hundreds. So whether that's like the neutral vodka seltzers that were new this year, or the Bud Light seltzer and Goose Island Summer Shandy, frozen margaritas, that I'd say I probably did about 75% of the time.
You said you liked carrying around the frozen margaritas, but which one of your products or Wrigley Field's products is the most tasking to carry around? And it's just usually might not be the best day for yourself.
It used to be the hot dogs. But I guess like midway through this year, or 3/4 of the way through the year, we got these new hot dog bags, and they're not these like giant metal containers anymore. I actually didn't sell hot dogs a single time once we got those new bags. So I'll put an asterisk up there with the hot dogs was most annoying, but TBD. I'll loop you guys in when I do sell hot dogs for the first time using that bag. The older vendors have appreciated the change of machinery to walk around. It's made it easier and lighter for them. So I trust their judgment, but everything else is not super difficult to carry. On fast, like on days when things are really flying and selling, especially with beer, some people will take like double loads or of water on like a 90-degree day. That's when it gets very physically difficult, and you're incentivizing yourself to sell as much as possible. Not even because of the monetary aspect, but purely because you don't want to carry it anymore because it's so heavy.
All right, let's talk Cubs. Obviously, you watch pretty much every game, so at home at least, so you would know. Hell of a season at the day's end. We talked all about it here on our podcast the whole year. It's been about a month removed now, so we can say, didn't end the way we wanted, but hell of a season. What were your thoughts, overview of 2023 on the field?
Yeah, I think you summed it up perfectly. Not a lot of expectations going into the year. We started out hot, then couldn't seem to win a game for our lives. And then we had that stretch in June or July. I can't remember exactly when that was. And then the faith came back and we were winning baseball games. And then basically had the worst 2 weeks of baseball that's humanly possible, and didn't make the playoffs. But I think it was still a successful season. It was fun to watch the team come together, best middle infield in baseball. I'm pumped for next year. Obviously, I would have loved to have playoff baseball, not only as a fan, but as a vendor. I would have loved to. It's been a while since I've worked a competitive playoff baseball type game in October at Wrigley. So I'm just hoping for that 2024, we can make it back there. But good year. Hopefully the guys get healthy in the off season and we see what this team can put together in 2024 after we hopefully re-sign Cody Bellinger.
You took the question right out of my mouth. Who besides Bellinger, obviously, is there anyone else that you're kind of looking at for this offseason, being a fan that, you just think would either make our team even better or you just would excite you?
I've seen rumors of a potential Juan Soto trade. That would be exciting for sure. Obviously, Ohtani would be unbelievable. It's interesting what his value is going to be after this UCL surgery. I think the main guy, honestly, in the Cubs organization that I'm most interested in, hopefully they get healthy, are Brennan Davis and Cody Hoyer. I never know how to pronounce his name. But I think those are really important pieces that if they can get healthy and get brought back, that we could put together a nice, well-rounded ball club.
Yeah, we talk about Cody on the show a fair amount. We had something lined up at one point even to talk to him. It didn't work out because he didn't play at all last year and wasn't really talking to much media, but I really hope the best for him, especially because I think that could be a great piece for this team.
Do you guys have a favorite moment from last season?
Ooh, we're getting interviewed, Ben. What do you think?
I'll tell you right away. Even though it wasn't at Wrigley, easily the Mike Tauchman catch in St. Louis. That was because what did that extend the win streak to? Like 9 or 10, I think.
Yeah.
Everyone got bought back in as soon as he made that catch, and then they played pretty good baseball through August, obviously up until that horrible 2 weeks. So 100% the Mike Talkman catch, especially being a Chicago kid too, or Illinois. And that was just, it was incredible.
Totally agree.
I'm gonna have to say I went to like 7 or 8 games this past summer at Wrigley, and that was the most for me. And I was proud because I was, I had a full-time job for the first time, right? Like an internship. So I was like paying my way to go to these games. Anyway, it was fun. But I got free tickets to go sit. When I would go, I'd buy my own tickets and the bleachers are like way upstairs. But I got free tickets with a friend to go sit 7 rows back behind first base for the game we ended up winning 20-9 against the Reds. And that was an incredible experience the whole way through. I remember thinking like, wow, this is an awesome view. Like, I really hope one of these guys cracks one right past us into the bleachers, and there ended up being, the most in Cubs history for a single game or whatever it was. So it was that and more. So you're probably in that near zone then, kind of near there. You said you're more on the first base side, usually in that zone most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, I saw plenty of balls go in that direction. I was actually down the first base line. Normally after the last call ends, I'll still stick around, for an inning and just hang out. And there's a couple ushers I like to watch the last inning with. But I was there for the Morel walk-off against the Sox and got an unbelievable video of it. But that, for me, I think was probably just watch the ball go right in front of my face down the first base line in right field. And that was pretty magical.
Magical is the right word. And I think that could be what sums up Wrigley Field to everybody. I've always wondered, because I've obviously had aspirations for working at Wrigley Field or for the Cubs, and as has Ben, and I think we all have. Does the magic still come to you every single day when you're there every single day, or does it wear off?
Every game. I walk up the tunnel and like the tunnel, from the concourse to the seats.
Right.
It feels like I'm walking out of a tunnel onto the field. But every time it somehow, I've probably worked 300 games now or more over my 8-year career. And it somehow continues to get more magical. And I've had the opportunity to see it when it's empty, which not a lot of Cubs fans really get to experience, but an empty Wrigley Field is just as cool as a 42,000 standing room only Wrigley Field. It's just like, it's got this aura about it. I'm very eager to get back. I'm actually working this weekend, the Iowa versus Northwestern football game.
Nice.
So it's been a long 6 weeks since I've been back at the stadium, and I will definitely be cherishing those 3 hours that I get until April of 24.
Is the plan to continue ushering as long as you possibly can, or is it going to be like a side job for you? We looked into a little bit and saw that you are currently the CEO of Bracketology, if you want to get a little bit into that as well.
Totally. Yeah. So the goal is for me to always, as long as I'm physically able and living in the area, I would love to vend. I always make jokes to the older guys like that I'm going to beat their record and I'm going to be the first 80-year-old that's going to be a seat vendor. But yeah, it's been really nice to be able to use that as like my income as I run my own company. So I run bracketology.tv. It's a fantasy gaming company for reality television shows. So we do like fantasy football and March Madness style brackets for Big Brother, The Bachelor, Survivor. So it's a lot of fun. And it having the flexibility to go to the games and work the games whenever I want or need to. And then also having the flexibility of being my own boss and working on my startup whenever I need to has been great. So as bummed as I am that the Cubs didn't make it farther into postseason baseball, it's been really nice the past month to just focus on the startup and content creation. So it's definitely, I don't know if I could have possibly had a busier summer than this past 6 months, especially adding the content creating on top of it. But luckily, all 3 things that I do, I love all of them. So they always say, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. When you do 3 things at the same time that you love, it starts to feel like work a little bit, but it's good work.
Let's talk about content creation. Yeah, you've done an awesome job with that. I've been following you on TikTok. We follow you on our 120 pod account. I saw that, but I was also just kind of scrolling through today, jogging my memory. You had these awesome TikToks from a couple weeks ago about your stats for the year. I don't know if you can go off the dome at all with some of that, or if you have a piece of paper, but like, just run us through that for our listeners that might not know. It was insane.
Yeah, totally. Whatever I can remember off the top of my head, I can share. I think I ended up working 66 games and 20 concerts. I sold the most dollar amount of product in frozen margaritas. I sold like $25,000 worth of frozen margaritas during the season. Sold, I think, like 15 grand worth of neutral vodka seltzer. I was averaging 145 hot dogs sold per game when I sold hot dogs, which is pretty good. Comes in loads of 50, and the goal is always to do around 3 loads. So it was nice to see that that was the average. I don't know what other interesting ones are out there. In terms of attendance, we had a good attendance season. I think the average attendance was like 33,000 for the 66 home games that I worked. The pitch clock definitely affected sales, just in terms of like net sales and game time and time to the 7th inning stretch. Last year, we were looking at like 2 hours and 20 minutes, and this year was like exactly 2 hours. So it cut like the pitch clock cut into our sales time like about 10%. I do think more people stayed in their seats to order food from us instead of, get up and risk missing a quick inning or two if you're waiting in the concession line. So I don't think it affected the actual dollar amount too much, but definitely something that I'm going to be watching as the years go on with the pitch clock.
It's absurd. But you mentioned concerts, and you've been working there since 2015. Is there any specific concert you're working, obviously, but is there any specific concert that you've just, it was the best one? You're getting the concerts, you're paying to work concerts. How that's gotta be such a cool feeling.
Oh, it's the best. I also sell concert merch at Soldier Field. So this year I got 3 Taylor Swift shows, which was incredible. She puts on quite a performance. At Wrigley, you can't beat the Dead and Company crowd.
Yeah.
They're always fun to see every year. A few years ago, I worked Lady Gaga, and she puts on a show. That's probably the best show that I saw. A lot of times I am selling merchandise in the trailer outside in the Gallagher Way area. And then I'll try to go in and seat vend for an hour or two during the actual concert. But yeah, you can't beat working those concerts. It's so much fun.
This is a little bit off topic. I'm going to go back to the one that you were talking about before, because it was cool to hear about the concerts. But you mentioned the pitch clock, bringing down net sales, and with the less time. Miller Park and a few other places had like these rumors they were gonna, and they eventually did waive the last call. Was there ever that discussion at Wrigley? Do you think that's ever possible? Or
I don't think there was ever that discussion. I don't know though. It's possible. So the big misconception at Wrigley is that last call is the end of the 7th inning every game, which is not true. For day games, last call is the end of the 8th. It always has been. We didn't extend our time. For night games, it's the end of the 7th. And then I think every other stadium, there were at least 4 to 6 stadiums that extended last call through the end of the 8th, even top of the 9th, I believe. I don't think they're going to do that. I obviously it would be good for us from a selling perspective, but you definitely have to weigh the safety concerns of people drinking all the way to the end of the game and then
correct, yeah,
potentially operating a vehicle. So I'm in support of keeping our last call rules as they are, even if it means less money for everyone.
I think as much of a viral sensation as you became this year, you also made another Wrigley Field vendor a viral sensation in Antonio. Any Cubs game that you watch, you will hear his voice in the background and you will hear it echo across Wrigley Field. What kind of person is he? Because I just can't get a read on it because of his loud hot dog call.
Antonio's the sweetest dude of all time. He's also an incredibly hard worker. So he's always one of the first vendors out there. He's an incredible hot dog salesman. Oftentimes when it's really hot, he'll sell lemonade and he yells frozen lemonade, lemon chill about as loud as he does hot dogs, which is pretty unbelievable. But a story about him, I did a video with the Cubs for National Hot Dog Day, and then WGN reached out about, getting to chat with Antonio and I live in studio. So we went in the studio. He was just kind of like in awe, and he had so much adrenaline going, a natural in front of the camera. And then the interview ended. We walked outside. I offered him a ride back home, and he said that he had so much energy that he was going to walk all the way back to his house. He's like, I can't sit right now. I just got to walk. I was like, you know where you're going? He's like, I'm just walking. So he's had a ton of fun with it also. It's like sometimes fans will DM me photos that they take with him. And a lot of the other vendors have had just a blast this past year getting recognized from the TikTok videos. And it's fun for me to see them get recognized for their work, their hard work that they've put in their entire lives. A lot of these guys, like there's no one that's been at Wrigley Field longer than the longest standing vendors, not owners, not players, not fans, grounds crew. It's the vendors that are kind of like the core of the organization. And my goal in making the videos was to highlight the older vendors and make sure that they got recognized for a job well done.
You always do an awesome job, you guys all as a collective, to adding the atmosphere of Wrigley Field. I've been to a couple different stadiums, and it's nothing beats it. You guys are awesome. The Wrigley Field vendors, you literally have your own voice, and I think that's true about all those things you were saying. Where is Antonio rank on the draft list?
He's actually not super far up. I think he started in 03. So he's probably right in the middle, is my guess.
That's crazy that 03 doesn't even get you to the top half. I was born in 02.
That's horrifying. But my goodness, yeah, he's put in 20 good years. But the guy that's been there the longest, his name's David Komarov. We call him Hopper. This past season was his 60th. So
wow,
yeah, 20 years just doesn't do it. You don't quit being a vendor because it's, especially at Wrigley Field, it's just the best part-time job in the world. So you do it until you physically can't. It's generally the rule of thumb.
That is awesome. Jonah, we appreciate you doing this today. Anything you want to say about the Cubs or your job or anything like that before we let you go?
I just appreciate you having me on. Keep grinding away and being Cubs fans and spreading the love of the Cubs and talking to people who share that similar love. And when you guys get to Wrigley Field, I think next year there's a couple of hot dogs with your name on it. If you were born in 02, you actually will be able to purchase a beverage.
Yeah.
So we got some business to transact in 2024, I think.
I will most definitely take you up on that.
Yeah.
2023 was my first season where I could purchase a beverage at Wrigley Field. So, yeah, neutral and a hot dog or a Bud Light and a hot dog sounds just about right.
Done deal. Consider it. Hopefully you down one of those, and at the same time you see Seiya Suzuki hitting a 435-foot home run to dead center.
That's the hope. Thanks, John. I appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
National League runner-up manager of the year, Craig Counsell. That's the subject for the third and final segment of today's episode. First, thank you to Jonah for doing that interview with us. Really fun. I look forward to talking to him again. Ben, we're going to have to take him up on that offer to get back to Wrigley Field by the time you're 21, and maybe we'll get some drinks and a hot dog or two.
I'm excited. That was just such an awesome interview. Once again, thank you so much to Jonah. And yeah, we're definitely going to have to take him up on that offer because he seemed pretty clear about getting us a beer and a hot dog.
Rounding third on this new episode of 120. As I mentioned, yeah, Craig Counsell's been kind of a focal point for our last 3 episodes, but we're recording this on a Tuesday night, the day after the Monday press conference for Craig Counsell and the Chicago Cubs, where he officially became the manager of your Chicago Cubs. Ben watched, I watched the quote that's circulating all around social media. Funny enough, I just kind of had it on in the background, but I don't even really directly remember him saying this, but this is like the big one. Quote, "It's time to be a Cub. There's momentum happening here and it feels close. And that means there's a really exciting future ahead of us. And now it's my job to be part of taking us to that next level. And that's the plan." Craig Counsell, who a man of few words, I learned. I never really knew that about the guy. I knew he was like not, the most Coach Prime, boisterous talk, but I never knew how quiet he was. He's just there. Gets in, gets out, and gets some wins. Dom's going to love him.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. That was the first time I think I've ever heard his voice too.
Yeah.
Something that I noticed that he kept saying across his interview, he said it multiple times, was he loves the health of the Cubs organization. And that's a really interesting quote that I kept pandering on because I want to know what he means by that. Does he mean internally with the way that the core we have in place right now, on top of the great farm system? And I texted Mikey as soon as the press conference ended, and I just want to know that pitch. I want to know what he said. They didn't really touch on it. That's how the Cubs roll at this point. Everything that is out there, they keep very in-house. And I just want to know what that pitch was, because Jed also said in a 670 interview that he couldn't tell Craig his entire offseason plan because of the fact that if Craig decided to go somewhere else, he has a ton of insight on the Cubs.
On the Cubs, yeah.
So whatever Jed and Tom, I don't even think Tom met with Craig. Whatever he said to him must have been just an incredible pitch for, one of the best managers in baseball to come on over the Chicago Cubs.
Two things about David Ross, or one directly related to David Ross and one kind of related. First, I love the part where he was saying Rossi texted him or called him. I think Rossi texted and Craig called him back to answer almost immediately before the news even broke, after they had both been told, but the world didn't know yet, which is awesome. And just makes me feel even worse because David Ross is such a great guy.
Yeah.
But I think the second thing that has to do with that is it goes to show all this talk about Counsell saying he didn't really realize or didn't really consider, doesn't care that the Brewers fans are gonna hate him for this. Like, he doesn't even really think about it. It's just like he kept telling people, like, I didn't really even consider it. It's just business. It's just trying to win baseball games. It's just business. It's nothing personal. It's just business. And that is kind of the thing with the David Ross situation. I think Counsell coming in could apply that to Ross getting fired. It can apply that to leaving, the team he played 6 years for and 9 years as a coach. He just wants to win, and he wants to get in and get out and do it with a, like you said, healthy organization. And I think that is really great. He's not here for revenge. He's here for his own sake.
Yeah. And I'm excited. I feel like we've been repeating for the last 3 episodes how excited we are, because it's just an awesome thing to have. You bring in a winning manager that you're improving on the margins, and I'm excited to see what comes with it. I'm really interested to see how this coaching staff shakes up, because I really, really hope that they return Tommy Hotovy, because he has been crucial to the Cubs' success, I guess you could say, over the last year and a half. I know that one rumor that I saw when the Counsell news first broke was that Pat Murphy was going to come over to Chicago to be Counsell's bench coach. That's not the case anymore, because Pat Murphy just got hired as the Brewers manager to lead that team.
Rip that job for Rossi. We thought there was a chance. No, but I think it's a great point, Ben. Counsell is just going to do a lot of great things for this team. And that quote that keeps circulating around Instagram and Twitter is kind of the bottom line of what we've been saying for the last 2 weeks, right? We've been a broken record. This team is reaching that new level, is proving that they are going to compete with this signing. And like you said, it's time to be a Chicago Cub. And it's truly the start of, quote, the next great Cubs team. We thought we saw it last year, but that was maybe the beginning. But I think it's time to actually, like, okay, we're in the era now, go win. Speaking of which, you can go first, and I'll say, speaking of which.
It's eerily familiar, and I think everyone realizes it's eerily familiar from that move over from 2014, 15 to now 16. And that this is like that 2015 when Joe Maddon came in with Craig Counsell.
And speaking of which, the Ben Zobrist of this team on, the most huge level, right? He's not just Ben Zobrist. He's not just any free agent that can take your team to the next level. No, he's the greatest two-way player of all time. That guy, his name is starting to get shuffled around every deck on Twitter and Instagram in Shohei Ohtani as the free agent that can put the Cubs over the edge. And I never really believed the hype. I didn't even want to believe the hype pre-Craig Counsell. And now it's all kind of clicking. There's a lot of rumors out there, Ben. We could stick the fishing line in and just pull out a rumor every day. I mean, Shohei's done in the Mets. Shohei doesn't care about geography. Shohei wants to win. Shohei likes the Braves. Shohei, would consider the Cubs again. It's just constant. But you have to kind of pick through the weeds and acknowledge that the Cubs are in on these sweepstakes.
Oh, 100%. And it's, as you said, you never really wanted to believe it. And I never, going into this offseason, even after the Counsell signing, like in the aftermath of it, the very quick aftermath, my mind never even pondered on Shohei Ohtani, because it was like, it's the big fish. It's the white whale. It's the white whale of all free agents in years.
Yeah.
But now these rumors are just picking up, and every single one is involving the Chicago Cubs, and it's just absurd to me that this is a real thing. The betting odds is the thing that gets me the most excited because of how quickly it changed. I think last week they were plus 2,000, and then the rumor mill started to kick in, and they're now 3.5 to 1 not favorites, but second to the Dodgers to get Shohei Ohtani, which is just absurd, man. The chance to even throw your name to get Ohtani and have him, pitch what you did to Craig Counsell to Ohtani to try and get him over to Chicago is just the feeling of having your name in that and potentially getting him over would just be the opportunity of a lifetime. And I will see obviously what unfolds here in the next couple of weeks. I think everyone's kind of waiting to see what he does before the rest of the free agents kind of break through and sign with their respective teams, because really all the teams with the big dollars are in on this guy.
I found it interesting. One of the takes that was swirling around yesterday was this take that Shohei Ohtani does not care about being as far west as possible anymore as he did the first time around in 2017, 2018. Do you believe that? Do you think that's actually true? Or do you think he's still leaning towards a Dodgers-ish team because he would rather be a little bit more west? And does that turn him off from a Yankees?
I don't know. It's every day there's a new rumor with him. As you said before, it's the geography. It's potentially taking a shorter term contract, which I know Jed would just love that if that was the possibility of a 7-year deal with a higher AAV or even less than that with potential opt-outs.
Right.
I still think the West Coast plays a huge factor, especially if the Dodgers throw him a truckload of money. I don't think he would have any problem just staying on the West Coast and playing for the Dodgers. But it just goes back to when did he get posted? 2017, I think it was now. He got posted in 2017, and the only teams that he talked to were West Coast teams, besides one, and that was the Chicago Cubs. And rumor has it the pitch that they offered to Ohtani was very compelling. It's just the time wasn't necessarily right when they talked to him back then, because when they did, there was no DH in the National League. He would have had to learn how to play the outfield, which he's the greatest player of all time. I guarantee you he would have picked it up just fine, but it's more of the plausibility of being able to pitch and then DH on the days you're not pitching.
Right.
Now, the DH is in the National League. The Cubs have a lot of money. They're moving into this new direction of the next great Cubs team. I think the Cubs have a real chance to get this thing done. Obviously, we're going to have to see how the rumors unfold as we get closer to those winter meetings, because I think he'll sign right around then. But just to have your name in that potential, and just the way that the rumors have just kind of encapsulated, it's really all you've kind of heard over the last 2 weeks now is Cubs and Dodgers, and then the Mariners and Mets and Braves have kind of floated around. But right now it really feels like it's the Cubs and Dodgers race to lose.
It's just so interesting that he did consider the Cubs when he did, and it probably did come down to that DH. I know they asked Jed about that the other day when they had a chance to talk to him on the score, and he was, yeah, probably had something to do with it. But as always, he was kind of beating around the bush with it. And he would just DH this year, so I could see him. I could see him going a bit shorter term. If I had to bet on it, like if I had $100 and they said, do what makes you feel most confident without your blue and red glasses, I would put on additional blue and white and red glasses and do the Dodgers.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. I mean, the real literal Vegas odds are going for second for the Cubs. And so I think there should be some hope, some hype around this. Like, I think I'm starting to buy into it a little bit. And there's plenty of other options if it doesn't work out, but I think it's a total possibility. Wouldn't it be crazy and just such a sign, an omen of where this Cubs team is going if they had the highest paid manager in baseball history and the highest paid player in baseball history on roster after this offseason? I mean, tell a Cubs fan that 5 years ago.
One thing that I think that's so important in this all is the fact that the Cubs should do this. They have every right to put as much chips into Ohtani as they possibly can because of the benefits that can come with it. You're telling me that you're going to get two of the highest paid Japanese players of all time on the same roster, two fan favorites in Japan. If you have Ohtani with Seiya Suzuki, you know how much that can bring in just for the Cubs in terms of profit. And then that's not even mentioning the possibility of bringing in Yamamoto as well, if that's what's going to cross their paths as well. They have every right to invest in this and try and get it done because of the potential benefits that could come with going forward and making that cap space and putting as much money into the product on the field as possible.
They have to start playing a few games a year in Japan, like the Jags in London.
Right?
They're gonna have so many Japanese Cubs fans that they're gonna have to have a Wrigley Field Japan. That'd be sick. I mean, I'd love to go there. We'll have to do a live episode in like 10 years from there. Ben, it's been an honor doing another episode of 120. Any final thoughts before we wrap it up? Because this is our last episode before the Thanksgiving holiday. I'm thankful for all of our listeners and for you and for doing 120 for almost a full year now.
Yeah, 100%. So thankful for all you guys that have been paying attention. We've seen a lot of growth over the past couple months. I'm excited for this off season. I knew this was going to be a big off season, but the way that it started and the way that things seem to be trending, it's exciting. And you got to be behind the Cubbies. Make sure you're keeping up with that rumor mill, because I think things are going to pick up real fast. And by the time that we come back after the Thanksgiving holiday, because we will not be having an episode next week with the holiday, when we come back, I think we're going to have a really good idea of what's potentially going down here.
Definitely more talk as we get into the winter meeting space. More crosstown trivia coming up here in the coming weeks. No set dates, I don't believe yet. Potentially one later this week, you said, right? But it depends when you can get those guys in for the semifinal. Big celebrities in the crosstown trivia tournament. Now that I'm not in it anymore, those guys got schedules. You got to go through their agents and stuff. So
yeah, for sure. Right.
Now that I'm not in it, I helped write questions actually last night.
Yeah, I
wasn't doing it before.
That was very appreciative. Hopefully I appreciate everyone for keeping up with Crosstown as well. It's been a lot of fun, and the support has been awesome. And we're wrapping up here shortly. 2 more episodes left. And before we crown a champion, congrats to Dom on beating Mikey and going to the championship. And we got one more match before we get there between Nick Kane and John. And then we get to crown a Crosstown Trivia Classic champion. All White Sox fans, though. That's the only part that kind of sucks.
Ooh. You gotta rig it one way. The standard's been set now, because we're a Cubs podcast channel that is doing this on YouTube now, and the White Sox fans are the final 3.
Ugh.
Maybe we'll do a Cubs fans only one to kind of cleanse the palate coming up next. Or we have a lot of random other fans who want to do it too. So we'll have to see. We'll have something coming down.
For sure. I'm excited for the future of that as well.
Go Cubs.